The LCS Player Association are back in action, and quite famously, you'll remember the LCS Player Association, headed up by the rep Philip Aram, who we had on an episode of The Four Horsemen that got quite fractious between him and Duncan, quite famously, if as I recall. And it was around about the same time where the player walkout was trying to apply pressure to Riot to kind of, be more collaborative and protect collegiate player jobs, essentially. And then Doublelift said, if it was a choice between, standing with the union or having my paper fucked with, fuck the union. And he said it on stream. And then everyone went, oh, he's a pretty big voice and rep. And he's just acted like a total double agent there. So, I mean, listen, to Americans who have been, again, trained over many years, well, it's not your fault, actually. Many unions were inherent corrupt institutions with ties to organized crime in your country. But let's not pretend the politicians in your country aren't corrupt institutions with ties to organized crime in your country. You got a lot of problems that you need to sort out. That's what happens when you're the world's biggest banana republic. But anyway, we'll save that for Belly of the Beast. Americans don't like unions, and so the Americans said this was based. Me, a humble European, still crying about Brexit with Gary Lineker. I was a bit more like, yeah, that's not good, mate. Unions are about unions. You can't really get things done unless you all, stand together. But I will say this, in the end, the walkout probably was a fucking pipe dream. I mean, Riot Games had said they were going to fucking bring in washed up players. Like, they were going to let Reginald come out of retirement and play mid, I think. It was like a genuine thing TSM were considering. So anyway, all of which is to say, the Player Association has been overall a net positive in my eyes. This isn't like what happened with the CSPPA. For contrast, basically was the Counter-Strike equivalent of a Players Association, and it was created to disrupt the lay of the land with regards to player rights in the space. But Mads Oland, who came in to run it, who is quite a controversial character, not in my opinion, but I guess in the eyes of kind of sports analysis. He came in, and essentially the CSPPA kind of shifted from taking battles to rolling over for ESL and letting them steal away people's validly earned ESL Pro League slots and then essentially sell them to other orgs that hadn't earned them without any recompense to the people they took it away from. They just said it was a financial reality because we were entering the partnered era at that time. And then in the background, Mads Oland was essentially wanting to get into being an agency, and suddenly the CSPPA, and I interviewed many people about it, and I did videos about it, and I wrote articles about it, they weren't serving their members anymore. In fact, you couldn't even get a rep to talk to you. And even though it was meant to be an open-for-all Counter-Strike clubhouse, there were even players that were representatives saying, I don't want that person to come into the union. And it descended into a farce and an embarrassment. And what went from being a historic chapter in our history, like everything else in CS, turned into a pile of shit where even the most basic of demands were essentially walked back the minute you had to go up against ESL. For instance, no games after midnight, please. Sorry. MR15 just lasts forever, and this meta's totally shit, so everyone's playing till 3 a.m. like it was the fucking old days. Oh, okay. No, wait. That was a, I mean, that's such a reasonable request, by the way. Working hours, essentially, Nope. Rolled over on that one. But we'll definitely go to war with Flashpoint. Oh, okay. So brave. So we still need player unions and player associations. Make no doubt about that. It's just right now, things are kind of good for players. That's the truth. Agents are doing a ridiculous job in CS, getting players money that makes no financial sense for anyone. ESL are rolling over backwards to accommodate them in Counter-Strike. but also just in general, there's been a big shift in the focus of who's important in the product. And obviously, you can't run a fan experience without having the players front and center of that. Because the fans don't come for you, the people running the tournament, they come for the players and they come for the orgs and etc. etc. So anyway, the CSPPA was dog shit. The LCS Player Association has been pretty decent. They've achieved some decent things. They even got Riot around the table. They walked back some stuff on the collegiate stuff. They've been more, not as much as they would have liked, but more collaborative and, talking to them. And so they've now moved on to this new initiative, which I think is really good. Because one of the real problems in the industry, like on the grand scheme of things, like total Saudi domination, government owning everything, fans not paying money and being dog shit, all of that dystopia. It's not really that important. But in that are the agents. The agents are fucking grifters, hustlers, unrealistic, out of control. And I used to advocate for agents. I remember when one of the other many failed projects that fell by the wayside for me was I wanted to essentially, like, how could we get genuine talent agents into esports to represent esports? And then I couldn't make it happen, but it happened organically, over time. And we didn't. I had a talent agent at one point, if you can believe it. Now it's like, do you have money from the Saudi Arabian state, the Chinese government, or the US government going into your project? Yes. I'm afraid I'm unavailable. Bye. That's kind of how it goes now. You don't need an agent for that, funnily enough. But I used to have one. I used to have a talent agent called Tobias, who hilariously also represented Tastosis. He represented both Tasteless and Artosis, that I'd written extensively about their role in promoting that documentary Kickstarter, which never got made until they got bailed out by CBS. And funnily enough, that's how we met. And then he was saying, could you stop fucking over my clients? And I went, no. In fact, I can now make the story about how you're harassing me for, quote, fucking over your clients. Why don't you, as an agent, realize that this is going to ruin their brand if it festers? And why don't you get ahead of it and advise them to stop saying it's totally fine? This guy used them to advertise a documentary he's not going to complete. And he went, oh, yeah, that is a good point, actually, yeah. and he went, by the way, do you have representation? I went, nah. And he went, want some? And I went, yeah, all right then. That'll be a laugh. Can't wait for you to break the news to your other clients. And that was how we got started there. That esports in 2014, it was just a better time. Just a lot more fun. But anyway, since then, agents have kind of, got crazy, and they're really, they really think they're like Premier League football agents, and they come in and they do these negotiations, and they're absolutely fucking crazy with them. I mean, some of the contracts I've seen where it's like the salaries are so like wild. It started with League, it definitely spilled over into CS. Insanely unjustifiable salaries, unjustifiable perks, like long contracts that don't even benefit your client because it's esports. Like, when you, like, don't tell me about it. I mean, Queserato is a bad example because he's the architect of his own fucking downfall. I don't know why Queserato hates himself as much as he does. But remember when Furia signed them 5-year contracts? Like, it's some mad agent has negotiated that. That doesn't benefit you. 5 years of not being able to get out unless the org agrees to your fucking buyout fee. 5 years having to play dog shit CS. No. 5 years is too long in esports. 3 years was fucking too long in esports. And these agents were coming and going, don't worry, man, I'm going to get you a load of financial security. It's 50 grand a month. Yeah, 3 years. Okay. Any clauses in the contract that I need to know about? Oh, yeah, well, I mean, I had to agree that you get a 70% pay cut if you ever get benched, but don't worry about that. You're not going to get benched. You're amazing. You're my client. And by the way, if you ever get benched, I'll just get you in another team, lol. And the player goes, duh, this sounds good, big number, good. And they sign a fucking contract. And so agents have been this like runaway fucking negative force on like the industry that people don't really talk about, because you want your players to have representation. You don't want them negotiating their own fucking contracts. They can't even plug in the mouse that they use for a fucking living half the time. We're not high functioning, a lot of pro players. Why would they be? They're athletes. But, you know, ultimately, some of these agents, they're not doing it because they care about esports or they care about their clients. They're doing it because, like esports owners, they're living in a fantasy world where they're like coming in and going, okay, well, you know, you want to get you want to sign CTE Adult Antonio Brown. You're going to have to work really hard for that, I'm afraid. The Buccaneers need a wide receiver. We all know Brady loves him. So, you know, we're going to have to talk. This is free agency, by the way. We want big money. And that's it. And yeah, it's show me the money, Jerry Maguire bullshit. That's what you're on. So they're not healthy. They haven't been a net positive overall, I would argue. They've fed into this culture of financial ruination that's basically enabled us to be bought by the Saudis, because esports orgs have to pay them. And no owner goes, listen, I'll lose 1,000 tournaments. I will never pay a CS player 50 grand a month, because I can't generate that 50 grand a month on anything they do. For him to even come to the org, I can't take more than 10% of the prize money that they don't win. So, you know, you can see immediately how this model is broken. And also, I'll say, I don't know if you recall the other story that I did, which I'll refresh everyone's memories. I should have had a Journalist of the Year award for this, but I didn't get one. It just wasn't good enough. So even in League, whenever I want to stick my head into an esports scene, I'll get it. I'll get what I want. This was the story. The league coach, Peter Zhang, was fired for alleged financial irregularities. And let me tell you, this, at the time, he'd just been let go. What this story led to was this cascading series of reports, because he was essentially embroiled in what I know was effectively like it was a double dipping scam. Like, TSM was so out of touch with their own business, they were basically saying to this guy, could you recommend some players? And he would go and be like, okay, listen, dear player, I can get you on TSM. They'll agree to anything I say. I've got total dominion over hiring you. But if I get you a TSM, will you give me some money? And will you give me something out of your paycheck? And they would go, well, yeah, we just want to play for TSM. Like, get me the bag, though. And he would go, yeah, no problem. And so Peter Zhang, like, the more and more I dug into it, you know, the more that he responded, like, the more this was investigated. It was an insane story. This was one of the major esports scandals. But because I reported it, it wasn't allowed on the subreddit. It was barely discussed. TSM fans hated me anyway, because I was the third member of the fucking holy war against them. Not language I chose. And anyway, I fucking did this story, and this guy was essentially acting as an agent and a coach, and that was the whole problem with it. That he was repping these players and taking money and saying it was legit, and then he got another agent who we don't know about. Money was going to their bank account. Then he ended up keeping a fucking player's car or the money for it. And then he lied about, my grandmother got sick and I had medical bills. No, don't ask for the receipts. It was a fucking... It was a mess. And so I know this shit's like the Wild West for how players get from point A to point B. Now, this story, by the way, which I genuinely consider this is a bigger deal than I Buy Power. This is like, if you ask me what my top stories are, it would be like, you know, Twitch and Good Game. I think I broke Twitch being bought by Amazon. It would be this. It would be Phantom Lord. You know, it would. I Buy Power might not even be my top 5 stories. But this was deemed not good enough to win Esports Journalist of the Year award, because Ashley Kang did do some really good interviews that year. So the worst part about it was at the Esports Awards when it was announced, because they don't. After I did my speech, mysteriously, after I did that speech that Dr. Disrespect gave us standing ovation to, they mysteriously don't put the journalists on with the main event anymore. So on the day where they do like, best catering, this is true. I swear this is true. On the day they do like best catering in esports, best t-shirt, best cosplayer. That's where they put the journalists now. And anyway, so obviously, like, I didn't go, and I wouldn't have given a speech or anything if I got the awards, because there would have been no one there to see it. It would have been pointless. And me, I love to grandstand whenever anyone puts a fucking mic in front of me. Anyway, when the guy said, "Oh yeah, that's Richard Lewis," I think he's like won it once before or something. Like, it's a historic hat trick. A historic hat trick. I'm in the lifetime achievement category. Ugh. But no. Anyway, Ashley Kang did them interviews, so And then they gave Mark Merrill a lifetime achievement award. And so Richard said, "Yep, can't do this no more. See ya." Anyway, as I said, look, I'm more than aware, tangent notwithstanding. I know. Just get to the point, blood. No, people come for the tangents. I know it's like a Wild West out there, man. Like, League of Legends has had a ton of problems. In terms of how players are, like, looked after, how they're housed, visa issues. Like, you fucking name it, man. Like, it's just really bad over there. And it's been bad for a long time because nobody talks about it, because they know if you get on Riot's bad side, you're not allowed to have a career. And so it's imperative that people try and find ways within that system to, like, normalize, like, good operations, because ultimately anything that Riot don't want you to say, if saying it is the only way to get it fixed, they will shut you down, and they'll mysteriously find dirt on you, and you'll be banned and ostracized. So, credit then to the LCS Players Association for coming up with this initiative, which I definitely think is going to improve the space. And here it is. They made this announcement today. They're announcing agent certification in North America. And you can see here, the LCS Players Association and the AVPA are proud to announce that the program in esports to regulate and encourage player representation. The LCSPA and AVPA's agent certification program is an incentivized, voluntary program for agents and lawyers working in the LCS or VCT Americas. It establishes the first uniform agent standards and accountability in esports on par with other major American sports leagues. Because that's the other thing. In the real world, we just people with ideas. But in the real world, you have to have a license for this stuff. You have to have a license, you have to have experience, you have got to meet with the approval. You can't just fucking roll up with a gold chain, smoking a cigar and saying, right, I'm an agent. That would be unthinkable, right? You have to be vetted and checked. You've got to have credentials. You've got to have a license. You've got a license for that, mate. All of that stuff. And so this is like something we've needed in esports for ages. And I just want to say before any smart asses in the YouTube comments, but Richard, you were against that esports certificate. Yeah, because that was a non-specific esports certificate that wanted people who've been in the industry for like 2 years. Again, the people who say, I've been in esports for 20 years because I played Nintendo, me, right? They wanted to give you a license to say you were competent in all areas of esports, like whatever the fuck that means, right? No, so that was a bad idea. This has specificity, so this is a good idea, and it's protectorate in nature. So it's also a good idea because a bad agent can really fuck you up. People acting as an agent on your behalf can fuck you up. Take your money, take your paper, lie to you about what you can get, deliberately get you bad deals, serve the interests of the organization. I mean, here's another thing that we probably should have talked about at some point, but it just doesn't matter because the Overwatch League died. But, people don't realize that a lot of pros that were professional Overwatch players, they were all represented by the same talent agents. And some of those talent agents were very friendly with some of those orgs that were investing in it. And certainly Activision Blizzard were telling those telling those players, hey, if you need an agent, you go with that agent. We like that agent. Just saying. And then you will remember we've now got those agreements that they were running that, the competitive balance tax, which they weren't allowed to do. And they had to settle an antitrust lawsuit, which has mysteriously sealed aspects to it. So, back to this. The PAs began development of the agent certification program over a year ago using existing MLB and NBA regulations as the foundation for building an esports-specific program. The LCSPA and AVPA sought feedback throughout the process from former traditional sports PA leaders with decades of experience in agent regulation. The LCSPA and AVPA also worked with Riot to ensure LCS and VCT America's teams provide the agent list resource alongside contract presentation. Because of these collaborations, the agent certification program is set up to succeed from day one. Let me also tell you about another initiative that this is akin to. Back when I was, I was a lefty. I was a I was a representative of the National Union of Students in US. I was elected into that position. I ran a campaign. People voted for me. That should terrify you. And basically, one of the things that I was very big on was getting better rights for students when it came to housing. Because I don't know about y'all who've been to university, but like my first student house was a shit hole. It was a token meter slum. It was really bad. And there were like these notorious fucking like just slumlord assholes around like fucking, you know, where I went to uni. And they would own, you know, multiple properties in some cases. And, you know, anytime you needed something fixed, nah, fuck you, you broke it. Anytime you wanted, you know, every time there was a plumbing leak or a pipe burst, nah, fuck you, your problem. And when you're a student and you got no money, there is no fuck you, it's your problem buffer. Like, having to pay a plumber to fix a fucking pipe is like, oh, I just don't eat for 2 weeks then, right? Okay, cool. So there were all these landlords that were notorious for this type of thing, and what they used to do was when you right. So again, it might work different where you live, but how it worked for us is year one you go to halls, right? Halls are halls of residence that the university own. You get subsidized rent from the university, essentially. You stay in a hall. They're just a house with fucking breeze block walls, one room, and there's like 6 of them, 7 of them, 8 of them in a pod, and you just end up with neighbors. And you just, these are your friends now, and that will typically be your friend group for the first year at university. And you'll have a shared kitchen and all that other stuff, shared area. Then, in your second year, what you do is you say, fuck halls of residence, I'm going into a real house, and my very best friends that I made at university, they come with you and you move in together. And that's how that works. And that's how Richard Lewis started dealing drugs. No, he didn't. That's a joke. Wink, wink. University was very expensive, folks. Anyway, I ended up jumping the gun on my first house, and it was a fucking shithole. It was a shithole, right? And so I couldn't believe how bad it was. We looked around when we moved in, but when it came to like the electrics and the waterworks, this is stuff you only flick a light switch. You're not checking every plug socket, all of this, trip switches, all that bullshit. So anyway, it was very much at the forefront of my thinking that, like, what happened was when you got out of halls, you would go to your welfare officer at university or whatever, and you would say, can I get a list of properties in the area that I can rent? And this property I was renting was on the fucking list. I mean, I spent one term. This is no joke now. I spent one term in an apartment as how it was sold to me. And again, I didn't give a fuck because it was cheap and I knew I could bilk them on the rent because what they were doing was illegal. But I spent one term in a literal death trap. It was a room they couldn't legally lease out because it was like an attic conversion with no out-facing window. And the only way I could get out was down a fucking ladder. So if there was a fire, I'd just burn to death. Like, if I just wake up and the house is on fire, he dead, he gone. Like, I would have to walk out the fire. There would be no way. This is how crazy I was back in the day. I tanked living in a death trap just so at the end I can go, yeah, you're not getting all of the rent. Sorry. just so I could have a bit more money. Anyway, so it was something I was very passionate about. So passionate, you might say, I put my life on the line for it. And so I wanted to get these slumlords off this list. Why should they have their properties represented to fucking students year in, year out? And so when we were having our meetings about what we're going to do at our uni and all that, that was what I used to. I want to put a motion. You know, I had to do all this pageantry. We were all playing like it was real fucking politics. You know, and so I put forward a motion to have known slumlords and robber barons and landlord assholes that didn't meet with good, positive, glowing reports from previous students, previous tenants. We just took them off the list. Their shit didn't get recommended no more, so it was a lot harder for them to get their properties. And the motion passed. I gave an incredible, passionate speech about it. And everyone went, yeah, this is just a good idea. Of course we should do this. And then I can tell you, all of them landlords and robber barons, when they weren't on the fucking list and they couldn't fill their 4 fucking houses they had to pay a mortgage on, oh, you better believe they called up the university, and you better believe they said, what do we got to do to get back on the list? And I said, well, you know, let me tell you about a few things you might want to do. Fix your fucking houses so that people can actually inhabit them. So sometimes putting scumbags on a list can work. And I like this. I like the idea of let's fucking get some of these fucking scumbags out the industry, because you're not going to pass a test, or you're not going to pass an ethical muster, or actually we've got players in our association that are going to come to us and say, no, you're not fit to represent players. So I like this. I like this a lot. It says here the program, and remember this is Valorant and League. That's what the VCT Americas is. So the program is built on 3 pillars. Promotion. Participation is voluntary. It is vital that agent certification provides real value to agents in exchange for their submission to increased scrutiny and third-party accountability by the PA. All certified agents and lawyers will be listed publicly on the PA website, and Riot will require all teams that discuss a contract with a prospective player to provide the following disclosures. Recommend the player have representation review any agreement before signing, and direct the player to the PA certified agent database. So there you go. Even Riot are going to say, like, you want to, right, listen, if a player's got a contract to negotiate, and you're an org, you know, with a play, you tell them, go get representation, and this is where you go and get it. And this is how it works in sports. Not that players these days, you know, hundreds of years of player advocacy, not that they need to be told anymore, yet get an agent, get a lawyer, check your shit. But yeah, also resources. Each year, the regulatory landscape in esports changes. Riot changes league rules. New ownership groups with different backgrounds enter the industry, and state and federal governments enact new laws. Yeah, it's a crazy wide world, esports. The LCSPA and AVPA are dedicated to providing all certified agents with resources to ensure an even playing field at the bargaining table. These resources will include access to presentations on the latest rule and regulation changes, PA developed data and analysis on market and regulatory conditions, and continual best practices and compliance training. Oh, good, yeah, you have to actually know what you're doing. It's almost like this is meant to be a real industry, a real fucking sport, with real people getting paid real fucking money. Isn't that good? Then, accountability. Ooh, I like accountability. My favourite bit. Agents applying to become PA certified agree to follow the certified agent rulebook. The rulebook establishes regular reporting requirements, limits on rates and recruiting practices, checks on conflicts of interest. Be still, my beating heart, and excessive gifting, and puts fair dispute resolutions in place. These rules close the door for bad actors seeking to exploit or defraud players. Well, oh my me, I can't help but feel I might have played some sort of small part in all of this. So yeah, this sounds very, very good. Credit to Philip and everyone at the Player Association. It goes on to just say that, you know, we want to elevate agents and blah, 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 and people who want to apply for the certification can here. I think what I'll do is I'll reach out to the PA. I'm going to get a copy of that rule book, and we'll go over it on a stream probably and talk about what the changes mean. But for now, real positive initiative, and one that I hope is going to be mirrored. We need to either revamp the CSPPA for Counter-Strike, you know, or if that brand is so busted, start it again. Because right now, I don't know where ESIC are, for the integrity stuff, I don't know what CSPPA does anymore. I've been told privately it is essentially dead. I don't even know who owns the brand, if anyone would have the brand. But right now, there's nothing like this in CS. There's nothing like this in a lot of esports. So, credit where it's due.